6 weeks after his bike was stolen, 12-year-old Cassius Clay walked into a boxing ring for the first time. He weighed 89 pounds. His opponent weighed 92. Neither boy knew what they were doing. The fight was clumsy, awkward, and, by professional standards, terrible. But when the referee raised Cassius Clay's hand in victory, something ignited inside that skinny kid from Louisville that would never go out. This is the story of the night Muhammad Ali became a fighter, even though nobody knew his name yet. It was 1954, just 6 weeks after the incident at the Louisville home show where Cassius's beloved red and white Schwinn bicycle had been stolen. That theft had led him to Officer Joe Martin's basement boxing gym in the Columbia Auditorium. For 6 weeks, Cassius had been training, learning to throw a jab, learning to keep his hands up, learning to move his feet, learning that boxing was harder than anything he'd ever done in his life. His arms ached constantly. His knuckles were bruised and swollen, even through the training gloves. He'd go home after practice and could barely lift his fork to eat dinner. His mother, Odessa, would look at her skinny 12-year-old son with worry in her eyes. "Baby, you don't have to do this," she'd say. "That bike is gone. You don't have to punish yourself." But Cassius wasn't punishing himself. He was discovering himself. Every day in that gym, he felt a little stronger, a little faster, a little more capable. The rage he'd felt when his bike was stolen hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into something else: determination, focus, the kind of drive that makes champions. Officer Joe Martin had been watching the young fighter closely during those 6 weeks. Martin had trained hundreds of kids over the years. Most of them lasted a few weeks before quitting. The sport was too hard. The discipline was too demanding. The pain was too constant. But Cassius kept showing up. More than that, Cassius was improving at a rate Martin had rarely seen. The boy's reflexes were exceptional. When Martin threw a punch, even slowly, just to show Cassius what was coming, the kid would slip it like he'd been born to dodge punches. His footwork was naturally smooth. He didn't plod around the ring like most beginners. He moved with a grace that seemed impossible for someone so new to the sport. But talent wasn't enough. Martin had seen talented kids before. What separated the ones who made it from the ones who quit was heart. Could you take a punch? Could you keep fighting when you were exhausted and hurt? Could you handle losing? Because everyone loses eventually. Martin needed to find out if Cassius Clay had that kind of heart. "Cassius," Martin said one afternoon after practice, "how would you like to have your first fight?" Cassius's eyes went wide. "A real fight? In front of people?" Martin smiled. "A real amateur fight. It'll be on my TV show, Tomorrow's Champions. You'll be fighting another kid your age and weight. You interested?" Cassius didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir. When?" Martin appreciated the enthusiasm, but he needed to be realistic. "It'll be in about a week. But I have to warn you, this boy you're fighting has had a few matches already. He's got more experience than you. You might lose. You understand that?" Cassius's jaw set in that determined way Martin was starting to recognize. "I won't lose. I'm going to whoop him." Martin had to suppress the laugh. The confidence was incredible, especially for a kid who'd only been training for 6 weeks. But confidence without skill was just arrogance. Martin would spend the next week trying to give Cassius enough skill to back up his confidence. The training intensified. Martin worked with Cassius every day after school, drilling the basics, over and over. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, slip left, slip right, move your feet, keep your hands up, protect your chin, don't drop your guard. The instructions became a rhythm, a mantra that Cassius repeated in his sleep. But Martin was worried. 6 weeks wasn't enough time. Most amateur boxers train for months, sometimes years before their first fight. Cassius was going to be at a serious disadvantage. His opponent, a kid named Ronnie O'Keefe, had already won 2 amateur bouts. He knew what it felt like to get hit hard. He knew how to handle the pressure of being in the ring with someone trying to hurt you. Martin considered canceling the fight. It wasn't worth risking injury or worse, crushing this kid's spirit before it had a chance to develop. But every time Martin saw Cassius train, saw the fire in his eyes, saw the way he pushed himself beyond exhaustion, Martin decided to let it happen. This kid needed to find out what he was made of. The night of the fight arrived. The venue was the Columbia Auditorium, the same building where Cassius had first met Martin. The event was being filmed for Martin's local television show, which meant there would be cameras, lights, and a small crowd of spectators. For a 12-year-old who'd never been in a real fight, it was overwhelming.
Cassius arrived with his father, Cassius Clay Sr., who was alternately proud and terrified. He'd signed the permission forms allowing his underage son to fight, but now that it was actually happening, he was having second thoughts. "You don't have to do this, boy," he told his son. "If you want to back out, nobody's going to think less of you." But Cassius wasn't backing out. He'd been telling everyone at school for a week that he was going to be on television, that he was going to fight, that he was going to win. Kids who'd mocked him before were suddenly interested. Even some of his teachers seemed impressed. Cassius Clay, the kid who couldn't sit still in class, the kid who struggled with reading and writing, was going to be on TV doing something special. In the makeshift locker room, really just a corner of the basement cordoned off with curtains, Martin helped Cassius prepare. He wrapped the boy's hands carefully, explaining what he was doing as he worked. "This protects your knuckles and your wrists. When you throw a punch, you want all that force going into your opponent, not breaking your own hand." Cassius watched intently, memorizing every detail. Even then, at 12 years old, he understood that boxing wasn't just about hitting hard. It was about technique, about preparation, about doing 1,000 small things right so that when the big moment came, you'd be ready. Martin put the boxing gloves on Cassius's wrapped hands and laced them tight. The gloves were larger than the training gloves Cassius was used to. They felt heavy and awkward. Martin saw the concern on the boy's face. "You'll get used to them once the bell rings. Trust me, when that fight starts, you won't even notice the gloves. You'll just be fighting." The weigh-in happened moments before the fight. Cassius stepped on the scale, 89 pounds. Ronnie O'Keefe stepped on next, 92 pounds. It wasn't a huge difference, but at that age, 3 pounds could matter. O'Keefe was stockier, more muscular, more developed. He looked like he'd been in fights before. Cassius looked like a strong wind might blow him over. The two boys stood face to face for the pre-fight instructions. The referee, one of Martin's assistant trainers, explained the rules. 3 rounds, 2 minutes each. No hitting below the belt, no holding. Obey my commands at all times, touch gloves, and come out fighting. Cassius touched his gloves to O'Keefe and looked into his opponent's eyes. O'Keefe stared back with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. He wasn't scared. He probably thought this was going to be easy, beating up some kid who'd only been training for 6 weeks. Then the bell rang. Cassius came out of his corner, and immediately everything Martin had taught him disappeared from his mind. He rushed forward, throwing wild punches with no technique, no strategy, just pure aggression. O'Keefe, more experienced, stepped back and let Cassius tire himself out. Then O'Keefe threw a straight right hand that caught Cassius square on the nose. It was the first time Cassius had ever been punched in a real fight. The pain was shocking. It wasn't like getting hit in practice with headgear and pulled punches. This was someone trying to hurt him, and they'd succeeded. Cassius's eyes watered. His nose started bleeding. For a moment, he wanted to quit, wanted to tell the referee to stop the fight, wanted to run back to that corner where Martin was yelling instructions he couldn't hear over the roaring in his head. But then something happened. The pain transformed into anger. And the anger transformed into focus. Cassius stopped rushing forward. He remembered what Martin had taught him. Keep your distance, use your jab, move your feet, make him miss. Cassius started jabbing, short, quick punches that snapped O'Keefe's head back. Nothing devastating, but enough to score points, enough to show the judges that Cassius wasn't just getting hit, he was hitting back. O'Keefe tried to respond with another big right hand, but this time Cassius saw it coming. He slipped to the left, just like Martin had taught him, and O'Keefe's punch hit nothing but air.
"How do you feel?" Martin asked after they got back to the locker room. Cassius was still buzzing with adrenaline, talking a mile a minute about every moment of the fight. "I feel like I can do this forever," he said. "I want to fight again. When's my next fight? I want to fight next week." Martin laughed. "Slow down, champ. Your body needs time to recover. But yeah, we'll get you another fight. You did good tonight. Real good. You've got something special." Over the next 6 years, Cassius Clay would have 99 more amateur fights. He'd win 100 in total, losing only 8. He'd become a 2-time national Golden Gloves champion. He'd represent the United States at the 1960 Olympics and win a gold medal. He'd turn professional and eventually become heavyweight champion of the world 3 times. But none of those achievements would have happened without that first fight. That clumsy, awkward, technically imperfect fight between two 12-year-olds in a basement gym in Louisville. That was the fight where Cassius discovered that he could take a punch and keep going, that he could overcome fear and pain, that he could win even when the odds were against him. Years later, when Muhammad Ali was the most famous athlete in the world, a reporter asked him about his first fight. Ali, whose memory for fights was usually crystal clear, couldn't remember most of the details. "I remember being scared. I remember getting hit and thinking I wanted to quit. But I didn't quit. And when they raised my hand at the end, I knew I'd found what I was born to do." That's what a first fight does. It doesn't make you a champion. It doesn't make you great. It just shows you whether you've got what it takes to keep going when things get hard. And on that night in 1954, a skinny kid from Louisville found out he had exactly what it takes. Cassius Clay won his first fight by split decision. Muhammad Ali would spend the next 62 years proving that first victory wasn't a fluke. It was destiny announcing itself to the world. If this story of beginning, perseverance, and discovery inspired you, share it with someone who's afraid to start something new. Remember, every champion was once a beginner who refused to quit after the first punch.